rather horrendous designs and mechanizations of our federal government structure that I feel directly imperiled not to tell anybody about, so that's why I'm here telling you. In doing so, I'm breaking my security oaths. I am also guilty of breaking major federal law. How long I'll be able to do this, anybody's guess. However, I would like to mention this talk is going to be broken up into 4 main topics. Each of these topics will have some bearing on what you people are involved in, you patriot people, or even some of you people that aren't patriots that may be leaning in that way or considering it. I want you to know these United States are a beautiful place. I've traveled in over 70 countries, and I cannot remember any country that has the beauty as well as the magnificence of its people like these United States. Give you an overview of basically what I am. I started off, went through engineering school, which half of my schooling was in the field. I built up a reputation for being a geological engineer as well as a structural engineer with both military and aerospace applications. I have helped build 2 main concern bases within these United States that have some significance as far as what is it called the New World Order. Number 1 is Dulce, New Mexico. I was involved in 1979 in a horrendous firefight with alien human type, whatever you want to call them. And I was one of the survivors. I'm probably the only talking survivor you'll ever hear. 2 other survivors are under close guard somewhere in these United States. One is not in very good shape. He's living in Canada. So I'm about the only one around that knows the firefight, that knows all the detailed files of the entire operation. 66 Secret Service agents, FBI, and the like, Black Berets died in that firefight. I was there. Number 1, part of what I'm going to tell you is going to be very shocking. Part of what I'm going to tell you is probably going to be very unbelievable. So, if instead of putting on your glasses, I'll ask you to put your skepticals on rather than your spectacles. But please feel free to do your own homework. I know the Freedom of Information Act isn't much to go on, but unfortunately it's basically the best we've got. Your local law library and your nearest law university is a good place to look for congressional records. So if one continues to do their homework, and one can be standing vigilant in regards to their country. I love the country that I'm living in more than I love my life. I would not be standing before you right now risking my life by telling you these things if I didn't believe it so. The first part of this talk is going to concern deep underground military bases and the black budget. Let me first start by emphasizing the black budget. The black budget is a secretive group, basically a secret budget. It garners 1/4 of the gross national product, the entire gross national product of these United States. At present, the gross national product is around $5 trillion. So 1/4 of that's about $1.25 trillion per year. At least 1.023 trillion, and I say at least, is used in black budget programs like deep underground military bases. Presently, there are 129 deep underground military bases in these United States. Is this our? No, this one doesn't work. This one too tall. Anyway, these 129 bases, they've been building them day and night unceasingly since the early 40s. Some of them were built even earlier than that. These bases comprise basically of large cities underground. They're connected by high-speed monorail magneto-leviton trains that can go up to Mach 2. Books have been written, several books recently have been written about this activity, all of which is verifiable through bibliography. I think Al Bielek will, unfortunately, Al Bielek has my only copy is Al Bielek here, by the way? Al Bielek? Yes, please do. Richard Sauder's book, he's a PhD architect, and he's written, he alone also is risking his life by talking about this. He worked with a number of government agencies on deep underground military bases. Okay, there are 129 of these in these United States. In and around where you live, in Idaho, there are 11 of them. It's a very large number. The average depth of each base is roughly a mile deep. They are basic whole cities hauled out underground. They are somewhere between 2 2/3 cubic miles and 4 1/4 cubic miles hauled out underground. You might ask how this is done. Well, right now they have laser drilling machines that can drill a tunnel 7 miles in one day. Obviously, we the poets I haven't been told about this. So unfortunately, I don't believe these things. The black projects, as we know them, sidestep Congress, which is illegal. Right now, the New World Order is depending upon these bases, and if I'd known it was the New World Order involved, I wouldn't have had anything to do with them. I was lied to rather extensively. Basically, the technology as we know it for every calendar year that goes by, every 12-month calendar year, the military technology increases about 44.5 years. This is why it's easy to understand that back in 1943 they were able to create through vacuum tube technology, a ship that literally disappeared from one place and reappeared 400 miles later in another place. My father, Otto Oscar Schneider, there's an interesting story about him. He fought on both sides of the war. He was originally a U-boat captain. He was captured. He was captured by the French. He was turned over to the United States Army. He was turned over to the United States Navy. He was repatriated here to Cocoa Beach, Florida, and Fort Lauderdale, and taken up to Philadelphia Navy Yard thereafter. And he was a master machinist as well as an MD doctor. He later became an MD doctor and never did anything later. But basically, he was involved with different kinds of concerns, such as A-bomb and H-bomb and Philadelphia experiment and these other kinds of projects. His groundwork, he invented a camera, a high-speed camera that took pictures of the first atomic tests in Bikini Island on 12th of July 1946, to which I have original photographs of, which show unidentified flying objects fleeing the bomb site at a high rate of speed. Bikini Island at the time was infested with things in various depths of its waters. The natives always saw them. The natives had problems with their cattle, or basically pigs is what they raised. And other things. Well, this story has never come out. This is basically what happened. So, at that time, through General MacArthur and others, they felt that, in fact, General MacArthur was coined in saying the term, the very next World War we have will be the war not with people from planet Earth, but from aliens or people from other planets. And this man was, if we hadn't had him during World War II, we wouldn't be here today. Anyway, my father laid the groundwork with theoreticians about the Philadelphia experiment and other experiments. What does that have to do with me? Other than the fact of that, all I can say is that if it wasn't for... See, he never told us kids this, and he kind of kept it secret until a couple of weeks before he died. I kind of regretfully say that. I don't agree with what he did on the other side of the pond in Nazi Germany, but I'll tell you one thing. I think he had a lot of guts in coming here and doing what he did. He was hated in his own land. In fact, there was a $1 million in gold reward for anybody who could kill him. Just bring the picture back of the dead person, and it never happened. Anyway, back to topic number one is dumb bases or deep underground military bases. We've been basically lied to, folks. We've been lied to a long time. Number one, the alien question. Nobody really knows the truth. We've been ruined by Madison Avenue has painted a very unrealistic picture of what's going on with outer space aliens and the inside of government, especially at Groom Lake. This particular facility, the hat shows, this wasn't the original insignia. This is kind of like the local fish wrapper type insignia. The original insignia had a skunk on it because I was part of the infamous skunk words. So, anyway, this particular base originally is housed up to 117 live alien critters, or whatever you want to call them. Right now, it's not housing much of anything. Most of the still hardware has been removed. They moved it over to Kirtland Air Force Base. First of all, I want to tell you about aliens and the alien agenda. Back in 1954, under the Eisenhower administration, the federal government decided to circumvent the Constitution of the United States and form a treaty outside of the borders of the United States, within the borders of the United States, basically a treaty from entities outside of the borders of the United States, and it was supposed to be secret. It was called the Greada 1954 Treaty, G-R-E-A-T-A, Greada 1954 Treaty. That basically said that the aliens could take a few cows and test their implanting techniques on a few human beings, but they had to give detailed lists of the people involved, etc., etc. Slowly but surely, the outer space aliens slowly altered the bargain until they decided they wouldn't go by it at all. And back in 1979, this was a reality. The firefight occurred kind of quite by accident. I was involved in building an addition to the deep underground military base at Dulce, New Mexico, which, by the way, is probably the United States' deepest base. It goes down 7 levels over 2.5 miles deep. But at that particular time, we had drilled 4 distinct holes in the desert ground, and we were going to link them together with shape-charged explosives. And then we were going to basically blow out large sections at a time. Well, when I was my job at that time was to go down in these holes, gather rock samples, check them for their particularity, for particle count, give a detailed account of what kind of chemical explosive or plastic explosive to use, and go from there. As I was headed down there, to my total surprise, we found ourselves amidst a large cavern that was already full of outer space aliens, otherwise known as large graves. I was petrified, as most people might be. The only thing I could think of doing at the time was shooting them. I killed 2 of them, but by the time I could reload and refire at that time, a Walter pistol as an engineer, so I didn't feel I had to carry a gun underground. I always carried this particular one. It's nice and small and it's quite effective. But anyway, I killed a couple of these things, and at that time there was several other groups of people down there. It's about 30 people total, and 30 to almost 40 more came down there, and they all got killed. Basically what had occurred was that we surprised a whole under mountain base of existing aliens, and later I was to find out that we are not the highest on the food chain. These aliens have probably been living on our planet for different groups of aliens anyway, short and the tall grays at least for 1 million years living here. And this could explain a lot of the theory behind the ancient theory of ancient astronauts and these other kinds of things like that. Might also explain the bloodthirstiness of different kinds of native populaces like the Aztecs, etc., Olmecs and whatnot. Anyway, I got shot basically here, and their kind of weapon wasn't really a gun-like thing. It was kind of like a box that they had on their body that they could manipulate. And it bore a hole in me, and it split my ribs apart, kind of gory and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, it also gave me a high dose of rather nasty cobalt radiation. And I later have cancer to this day. It's probably a result of it, although I can't prove that. Okay, the second part of my talk is topic number 2. It includes basically how this all occurred. How could we have possibly gotten involved? Well, we finished working with, we basically were beaten down by World War II, and I guess we were figured to be rather vulnerable as apocalypse in the world, which we were at the time. And I'm sure this is probably why we at our weakest point later found out to be vulnerable indeed, and so we were basically attacked. And of course, I think some of us, how many people here are familiar with the crash at Aztec, New Mexico? Raise your hand. In 1947, sometime in July of 1947, there was a large crash of a flying saucer. I believe it had 7 or 8 alien critters, or whatever you want to call them, aliens, and one survived, and I believe 6 or 7 were, I don't know the whole story about the whole thing. And one of the artifacts I have here on the table is when I was a young child, I was about 14 at the time. I had a friend of my father, was Sir Johnny Rollins, he had a versional intelligence. And he gave me, I asked him if I could have a piece of metal of this crashed disc, and my father protested violently, but anyway, Johnny Rollins said, sure, I can give you a little piece, and he gave me a little piece. I've had it in my collection ever since. That was kind of like a small start of the collection. But other than that, the UFOs really wasn't my bag until I started working at Area 51, which is Nellis Air Force Base north of Las Vegas, Nevada. Going back in 1979 in a firefight, it took me about 2.5 years to recuperate, enough that I could go back to work. But I did. I survived. I went back to work through Morrison Peninsula, EG&G, and Bechtel and Page and Page and other construction outfits at the time. Anyway, at Area 51, they were testing all kinds of very peculiar spacecraft. I think you're also, how many people here, for instance, are familiar with Bob Lazar's story? Good. That's a good group indeed. I suggest more of you buy or obtain his tape or borrow his tape and read some of the publications. He was a physicist who worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory, at Area 51, trying to decipher what was the propulsion factor of basically these alien spacecraft, these discs and other kinds of type of craft. So, but there's another thing I want to talk to you about other than all this stuff about deep underground military basing that might be effective. We're all basically here as kind of like a captive audience, except that we're all worried about the strange activity of our federal government. I'm very worried about it. They've stonewalled senators. They've lied to the public. They refuse to tell the truth in regards to the alien matters. I can go on and on. That the list is it would take longer than there are days here, let alone minutes. So I can tell you that from all respects, I'm rather disgruntled that since I used to be a rather high-ranking worker in our federal government structure, I'm very disappointed in the activities of our federal government, very worried. For instance, I'll run by several topics to you. Recently I happen to know somebody who was in around, I live just south of Portland, Oregon. I know somebody that works at Gunderson Steel Fabrication, and what they do is they make railroad cars. And a fellow I know, I've known for the better part of 30 years. He works there. He's kind of a lead welder and engineer. He's kind of a quiet type, and he came in excited to me. He called me up, and I met him, and I tried to calm him down quite a bit. But he told me, he says, well, they're building prisoner cars. They're going to, looks like everything you've been talking about the federal government is starting to happen. And he was real nervous about it. And I said, slow down, Bob. So anyway, he told me what was happening. He mentioned that Gunderson has got a contract with the federal government to build 107,200 full-length rail cars, each with 143 pairs of shackles in each car. And there are 11 subcontractors in this giant project, and supposedly Gunderson got over $2 billion for the contract. Bethlehem Steel, there's different steel outfits or different fabrication outfits across the country are going. Anyway, I says, this is a nice, fantastic story, but how does it pertain? And he says, well, I got to show you one of these cars. So we did. We went to the rail yards in North Portland. I call it Graffitiville, USA, because it's wall-to-wall graffiti. And there's a new car. And he popped open the seal and slid the door back, and there they were. Boy, he wasn't wrong. Yeah, it's scary. Now, if you multiply 107,200 times 143 times 11, you'll come up with a monster figure of about 15 million. 15 million is about the number of interested people that I would consider patriots of these United States, and other interested people that don't like seeing what's going on with our federal government, that want to do some serious changing but can't do it. See, no more can we vote out our elected officials who become kings and queens over us. And I hate to say this, folks, but our present structure of government is not democracy at all. It's technocracy. And it's a form of feudalism. It has nothing to do with the republic. To the republic for which it stands, one nation under God. These people are godless. They've legislated out prayer in public schools. First of all, the public school system is a disgrace, but here they voted out prayer. It used to be before you started class in grade school, you'd have a little prayer. It's kind of a neat thing. Well, now you can't do that. It's against the law. If you do that, by the way, you can get fined up to $100,000 and you get 2.5 years in prison. Now, somewhere down the line, I don't believe this is very prudent. I believe that we deserve better. We can do better. I also believe that our federal government now is running the gamut of enslaving good, freedom-loving people of these United States. I love these United States more in my life. That's why I'm talking about this to many people as I can find. I'm not a very good speaker, but I can tell you, I'll keep shooting my mouth off until somebody puts a bullet in me, because I'll tell you, it's worth it to talk to a group like this or any other group about the atrocities of our federal government structure. Now, that's only one problem. There are other problems. How about the deep underground military bases I've been talking about? I'm going to show you a number of things that I've collected here as kind of statistics, and just bear with me here. I'll drop the mic here. We have stealth black jets, and here are the different code names for them. There's 29 prototypes, different prototypes presently. Cost per biennium is roughly somewhere around $1.6 trillion. I did this compilation in 1993. Budget from U.S. Congress 5-year plan that we're told about is $247.6 million. You couldn't buy the spare parts of all the black helicopters and the F-117As and the B-1, the B-2 bomber, and all the other 24, 25 prototypes. Couldn't even get the nuts and bolts of that. So we've been lied to, folks, and I know we can do better. Black budget garners this figure, roughly $1.25 trillion every 2 years. Trillion. I'm not talking billion, folks. Trillion. If you don't know what a trillion is, it's 1,000 billion. It's a big number. If you were to regard that in dollar bills, it would be 11 tons of dollar bills. That's how big a trillion is. Okay. The black budget literally means hidden budget. The U.S. Congress never sees the books of this clandestine pot of gold. Contractors of stealth, and I've listed quite a few here. UT&G, Westinghouse, McDonnell Douglas, Morrison-Knudsen, Black & Hood Security Systems, Boeing Aerospace, Lorimar Aerospace, Aerospatiale of France, Mitsubishi of Japan, also Mitsubishi Heavy Electric Industries, Ryder Trucks, Bechtel, IG Farben, that's a chemical company, plus a host of hundreds more. Is this what we're supposed to be living up to as freedom-loving people of these United States? I don't believe so. Still, 68% of the U.S. military budget is directly or indirectly affected by the black budget. Star Wars, otherwise nicknamed Star Wars, Strategic Defense Initiative, relies heavily upon stealth weaponry. By the way, none of this would have been available without us taking apart with a fine-tooth comb crashed flying saucers that either we downed or they crashed themselves into our deserts. None. All these materials on the table, some of which are formed by our space shuttle, by the way, you might ask, what's it shuttling? Well, it's shuttling large ingots of metal that are used, that are specially milled down. First of all, they're milled in the confines of outer space. Most of these metals cannot be produced on the planet. They need a near vacuum of outer space for their production. That's what we're shuttling. We're not even... Another thing about Strategic Defense Initiative, I believe it's there to prevent alien attack upon planet Earth. It has nothing to do with the Cold War. As we have seen, the Cold War was a total farce. And it was only a toy, an implement toy, to garner billions and trillions of dollars from good, loving, tax-paying citizens like I am and you are. For what? I don't mind a defense initiative against attack from, if it be from a real threat. But I sure hate to be lied to about there being this kind of communism and that kind of communism. And when we all find out the whole thing has been planned lock, stock, and barrel for the last 75 years by an intergovernmental group, I guess then we kind of know which side the bread is buttered on. Anyway, here's another piece of information for you folks. The DEA, ATF, Drug Enforcement Agency, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearm, These agencies rely upon stealth tactical weaponry for as much as 40% of its operations and budget. Remember, this is in 1993. The figures have gone up considerably since. The United Nations used American stealth aircraft for over 28% of its collective worldwide operations from 1990 to 1992, and that's taken for the Center for Strategic Studies and United Nations Report 392. The Guardians of Stealth. There are over 3 distinct classifications of special police used to guard one of our most well-kept secrets. Number 1. This is the most disturbing of all. The MJTF, and that, by the way, that stands for Military Joint Tactical Force, otherwise known as the Black Berets. Some people call them the Delta Force, and there are other names for it. It's a multinational tactical force primarily used to guard the various stealth aircraft worldwide. And by the way, see the picture over here on the table? You might come over there and look at it. After the talk, you might do that, or during the break. You'll find out a nice picture of it there. There was 172 of them built. 10 of them crashed or were crippled. Something went wrong with them. So, roughly 162 or 3, I can't remember at last count. We gave them away, the federal government gave them away. Bill Clinton signed them away about 6 weeks ago to the United Nations. Is this what we are paying our hard-earned tax money to do, folks? No, I don't believe so, and I know we can do better. Starting off with the World Trade Center bombing. I was hired not too long ago to do a report. First of all, I know about the 90-some-odd varieties of chemical explosives. First of all, I looked at the pictures that were actually taken right after the blast, and the concrete was puddled and melted. The steel and the rebar inside the cement was literally extruded up to 6 feet longer in its length. And there's only one weapon that can do that, and that's a nuclear weapon. And that's a construction nuclear weapon. So obviously the people that they're looking for that they say was a nitrate explosive that did the damage, they're lying 100%, folks. The people they have in custody probably didn't do the crime. As a matter of fact, I have reason to believe that very same group did do other crimes. They killed, I believe, a Jewish rabbi in New York, and maybe this was some kind of scapegoat problem, but I'm not sure about that. However, I want to further mention that with the last explosion in Oklahoma City, they also say basically it was a nitrated or fertilizer bomb that did it, a whole truck full. First they came out with the information, said it was 1,000 pounds, then it was 1,500, then it was 2,000, then it was 3,000, then it was 4,000, now it's 20,000. Well, by the way, you can't put 20,000 pounds in a Ryder truck, can you? Now, I've never mixed explosives per se. I know the chemical structure and the application of construction value explosives. I earned a reputation on it. I helped hollow out over 13 deep underground military bases in the United States. I worked on the Malta project. I worked on West Germany on its military bases, and Spain on its, and Italy on its. I can tell you from very sure experience, a nitrate explosive wouldn't have hardly shattered the windows of that building. It would maybe have knocked the facing off. It would have killed a few people, maybe at the most 20 to 30 people tops, but it would never have done that kind of damage. I believe I've been lied to as a member in good standing of these United States, and I'm not taking it any longer. So I'm telling you that you've been lied to. How many people are in this room? You've all been lied to, lock, stock, and barrel, and I do believe if we all get up and say, we've had enough, we want the truth, and if we're not going to get the truth, we want you to step down. If you won't step down, then I do believe our founding fathers told us and warned us that a federal government structure out of control is totalitarian slavery, and I do believe that we have to do something about it. Another thing I want to blow by your ears is the fact that a lot of you have probably seen in different areas black helicopters. There's over 64,000 black helicopters in these United States. For every hour that goes by, there's one being built. Is this the proper use of our tax money? I don't believe so. What in the heck does the federal government need 64,000 tactical helicopters for if they are not trying to enslave us? I doubt the entire military government structure needs 64,000. Worldwide, supposedly over 230 countries. I doubt all the world needs that many helicopters. Stealth aircraft, for instance. The F-117A, there's 157 of the son of a guns going around. You know their sole purpose is? They're all loaded with LIDAR, L-I-D-A-R, and SEER, computer-enhanced imaging radar. They can fly over your house. They can see you walking from room to room. They can tell if you've got an old antique rifle on your mantelpiece. They can see objects in the house with a variation, limit and capability of 1 inch to 30,000 miles. That's how accurate this is. Is this the proper use of our tax money? I would say not. Al Bailey is our second speaker. He worked in a very secretive government operation called the Philadelphia Experiment. Now, so did my father, by the way. I didn't know this until on his deathbed, and I now have the picture proof of it. Also, I have a picture of a supposed non-human alien called Val Thor that worked for the Pentagon. He still works for the Pentagon. In 58 years, he has not changed. He still looks young. Something's wrong. I don't know if he's doing it under duress or what, but evidently he's still there. Don't know what kind of alien he is. He's about a few inches shy of 8 feet tall. He's very bright. He's worked in the Department of Defense and the Pentagon for, I believe, 58 or 56 years, one of the two figures. Don't tell me, folks, don't tell me, federal government, that this isn't so. That when we see something in the night sky that doesn't add up to an aircraft, that it's a weather balloon, or that we're mistaken, or I'm crazy, or we're crazy. Because it's not. You've been lied to, you've been cheated. Now, at the present moment in time, 7 weeks ago, in Nellis Air Force Base, and a year and about a month ago, about 13 months ago, because I was there at that time, we entertained the United Nations and the Russians and showed them Area 51, which is supposed to be our most secret military base. What is going on, folks? Tell you what's going on. They're being sold down the river. The federal government right now, with their high tech, has invented an earthquake device. I have reason to believe that the earthquake in Kobe, Japan, by the way, I'm a geologist, I know exactly what I'm talking about. There was no pulse in the pulse wave. There's supposed to be a pulse wave in any earthquake. There was none in the Kobe, Japan earthquake. None. In 1989, in and around San Francisco, there was an earthquake. There was no pulse or pulse wave. That is a Tesla device. Nikola Tesla invented it, and he did it not out of evil, but he was trying to make a device that could be accurately used for construction and building of buildings and that kind of thing. It's been taken for evil, though. Guaranteed. I want you to know that the black budget programs throughout these United States have subverted science as we know it. What's AIDS, for instance? I'll tell you what AIDS is. AIDS was invented by the National Ordnance Laboratory in Chicago, Illinois in 1972. It was a biological weapon used against the people of these United States. The reason I know this, I have seen the documentation by the Office of Strategic Services, which, by the way, is still in operation to this day, through the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, Georgia. They used the glandular excretions of animals as well as humans as well as outer space aliens. I'll tell you something about these outer space aliens. They're mortal. They can be shot dead just like you and I can, but I'll tell you one thing. They're bad news in the worst order. We have absolutely no defense against their germs. None. They're a biological weapon of terrible consequence. I advocate that every alien on this planet, good or bad, if they're good or bad, they have to be isolated. They are a biological weapon. Saddam Hussein and other people have killed 3.5 million Kurdish people with a similar biological weapon. Do we, the people of this planet, deserve this? No, we don't. Right now I'm dying of cancer related to work that I did for the federal government. I might live 6 months, I might not. I don't know. I'll tell you one thing. If I keep speaking out the way I am, maybe God will give me the life to talk my head off. I will break every law that it takes to talk my head off. I love my country and its people more than my life. 11 of my best friends in the last 22 years have been murdered. 8 of them called suicide. I finally got wind of one of them. Portland police is now involved in one of them. Not going to mention names. Before a grand jury, including the medical examiner's office. Murder by suicide, I call it. My friend Ronald Lee Rummel is an Air Force officer. He's a Silver Star winner. He's a patriot. Murdered. Because he started speaking out about unidentified flying objects while being still employed as a member of the United States Air Force. And how was he murdered? He was drugged. His jaw was broken open. A cheap pistol with filed off numbers called the Jennings J-22 was shoved in his hand. Somebody pulled the trigger because they found a piece of a fingerprint or inside of a palm print on the weapon. Before I went to talk in Las Vegas, Nevada, I drove a friend of mine, a disabled friend of mine, down to Joshua Tree. And 29 pounds was next to Joshua Tree, and I went to see a dying veteran, disabled veteran friend of mine also. Kind of an acquaintance friend. I don't see him very often. Can hardly talk. He's got throat cancer from working with atomic weapons. The federal government didn't want to pay for it, so he married a nurse whose father has donated enough money to keep him alive for a little longer. Well, after seeing these two people, I drove up over the mountains. I had to drive around the mountains and up into them to get to Needles, California. It was followed by 2 government vans, E350 vans with G14 plates, each with a couple of occupants apiece. One had an Uzi ready, and he was loaded, because I could see it through one of the windows. They zoomed by. I knew exactly what. I've already spoken out. I've spoken in 19 talks to present. I've probably reached 45,000 people. Well, they sped up around me. I sped up around them, took a bunch of pictures with a high-speed camera. Then they caught up to me, and it looked like they were trying to force me off the road. I have a Ford Taurus sedan. But what they don't know about that Ford Taurus sedan's got a police interceptor motor. It's got an 8-liter motor. It'll do 140 in the shade. So I got up above them, and I come to a screeching halt right in the middle of the road. And the road was just wide enough for my car and maybe a foot on either side. There was a deep ravine on to the left. There was a shallow ravine about 9 or 10, I'd guess roughly 9 feet deep, 10 feet deep, something like that. On the other side. One of them skidded over, rolled over in the right ditch. One went over to the left ditch and rolled all the way down. I could hear a bunch of cries for help and crackling and glass, and finally I didn't hear anything. Is this what it's going to take? 2 weeks ago, I had a man come to my Wilsonville apartment. Going to arrest me. By the way, I have a Rowlite 38 clearance. I don't know if you know what that means. I only report to 3 individuals with that clearance. President of the United States, head of the CIA, and or a base commander. No one else. This man came to arrest me. I called the sheriff. Said, I can't open the door to you. Open the door or we'll beat it in. I said, if you beat it in, you're at risk of your life. Are you threatening me? Yes, sir, I'm threatening you. I'm going to call the sheriff right now and have you removed. You're threatening my life. Call the sheriff. The sheriff came, Clackamas County Sheriff car came, pulled right behind him. I know this man very well. I would trust him with my life after what he did. He risked his job. He risked a 22-year career with the police department. He went right behind this guy, prevented him from getting out. He threw a bullhorn. He says, "You are under arrest. Please come with me. I'll escort you out." He was escorted out in handcuffs to his disgrace. Sheriffs have a lot of power in this country. They can arrest FBI, CIA, and DIA and the like. It's a very good thing. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here talking to you. Now, I want to end this talk by mentioning we all know what the Patriot Movement stands for. Every one of us loves America. Most of us love America more than our life. Most of us are willing to defend it as we have defended it before. And we'll defend it again and again and again for how many times it takes until we get the objective done. I would like to believe I'm a patriot. I'm no longer employed by the federal government. I took a pair of scissors and cut up my security card, and I mailed it back to the SOBs, pardon my French. I wrote a detailed letter and said, when a life is threatened in any way, shape, or form, I did this, it's already been threatened. I will consider downloading 140,000 pages of information sensitive to the New World Order, Strategic Defense Initiative, and what it really stands for, and the federal government structure as a whole. I've already begun to do this through the internet and the internet worldwide. I spent $78,000 getting these kind of pictures away from the federal government after my father willed them to me in his will. They're on the other piece of paper with a few revealing notes on them. Stanley Valthor is this particular character right here. Right here. He hasn't changed a bit, 58 years thereabouts. Have over 7,000 pictures. Have detailed files and writings. I have alien artifacts and medals. You're only looking at half a dozen of maybe 7,000 that I have. I feel you people have to know the truth as best as I could tell. Thank you very much.